You're tuning into Black and White Sports on YouTube. The no-holds-barred truth on sports. The main event starts now.
I am back. Rodrance for Black and White Sports. Let's talk about ESPN and Riley Gaines. Now, Riley Gaines is the former University of Kentucky swimmer that was forced to compete against Lia Thomas, the biological man, in NC2A swimming competition. Famously tied for fifth, and they gave the trophy to Lia Thomas and blatantly admitted there was an agenda there. Now, there's been a lot of crazy fallout out of that, things that she has talked about in regards to that situation. And, of course, she gave a speech to a class last week at San Francisco State University, and she was attacked. She was attacked while she was there by violent protesters, by a biological man, a transgender, but a biological man nonetheless, attacked a woman. Now, you would think on a sports network that would get coverage, unless you are the leftist lunatics over at ESPN. To my knowledge, they only have one conservative over there, and that is Sage Steele, and she has come out and she has spoken out. But as far as actual coverage of what happened, ESPN has been completely silent. They have not covered it at all. I don't know that this surprises anybody, but it's amazing because Bomani Jones is still running his mouth about Donald Trump over there, and they are still continuously talking about how racist white people are all the time. So let's get to this. This is crazy, but and not surprising in the least. A violent mob of trans activists attacked Riley Gaines last week. Gaines has emerged as a prominent figure in sports and culture for her opposition to biological men competing against female athletes. Of late, Gaines is one of the few figures in sports to garner enough reaction to morph into a topic on cable news as her attack was. Yet, the leading sports brand in the country could not find a blurb to reference the story. Based on website searches, ESPN.com has not mentioned the attack on Gaines even once. ESPN PR did not respond to Outkick for request for comment on its decision to ignore a man assaulting a notable female athlete in the name of transgenderism. It will be shocking if they ever mention it. It would be against their agenda. The omission is of particular interest as ESPN went out of its way to mention Lia Thomas, whose inclusion in women's swimming prompted Gaines to initially speak out. Last month, ESPN honored Thomas as part of its Women's History Month campaign. They honored a man, in their Women's History Month campaign. If you're not keeping track, this is nuts. For calling himself a woman in the swimming pool while he competes against women. A man dominating women was part of their Women's History Month campaign. I mean, that's nuts. That is absolutely crazy. Gaines is of less importance, it would appear. In addition to the webpage, the women inside ESPN have also stood silent on the matter except for Sage Steele, solely openly conservative talent at the network. This is what she said. She said, "Stay strong at Riley Gaines. You have more people than you know supporting you and standing up to this madness. Are there any other women with public platforms willing to stand up for at Riley Gaines and the millions of female athletes? I've literally only heard basically Sage Steele and Megan Kelly say anything. It's crazy. Samantha Steele Ponder spoke up, but nothing from any other female colleagues. I'm shocked. I'm surprised that anybody said anything else. Nothing from Ellie Duncan. Oh, wow, you're quick to talk about everything and run your mouth about everything, and you said nothing? Imagine that. It doesn't fit your narrative. Who used ESPN airwaves to advocate for teachers to talk about genitalia with young students and for fathers to speak up in favor of daughters having abortions in all 50 states. Nothing from Malika Andrews, who nearly cried on air during NBA draft coverage because she erroneously believed overturning Roe v. Wade violates the Constitution. It doesn't, you idiot. Nothing from supposedly Title IXers or ESPN's women's sports vertical, ESPNW. Wow. Gaines' assault by virtue of a man calling himself a trans has nothing on baseless accusations of racism for those who criticize Angel Reese for her unprofessional behavior. What's more, ESPN personalities are covering politics instead of Gaines' assault. Earlier this month, failed television and radio host Bomani Jones covered former President Donald Trump's arrest on ESPN's podcast network. I mean, Lord knows he couldn't do it on actual airwaves because he's tanked so many ratings they won't let him on anymore. ESPN deemed Trump's arrest, abortion, Florida legislation, and the skin color of Jesus, a Mark Jones exclusive, all newsworthy topics for the sports network, but not an attack on most culturally relevant voice in female sports. Check the engagement of Gaines' tweets and videos. She's a lightning rod. We're talking hundreds of thousands and millions of interactions on her social media. And ESPN won't mention it. In fact, ESPN hasn't covered Gaines' advocacy for female sports either. ESPN didn't find her comments that Lia Thomas strutted around the female locker room, exposing his penis, worthy of conversation. Is ESPN anti-woman? Perhaps. Of course they are. The company is certainly cowardly. Trans women are assaulting the foundation of female athletes. Their inclusion puts girls and women at a disadvantage in which they cannot physically overcome. Their inclusion forces women to change and shower next to naked men. And ESPN seems to be just fine with that. However, supporting trans athletes is hip, progressive, and woke. And it's where the retweets and praise come from, hence honoring of Thomas. Saying otherwise would serve counterproductive to that mission, as would covering the attack on Riley Gaines, a story that undoubtedly shed light on vitriol and troubling commands that exist amongst trans activists. ESPN feared covering Gaines' story would ignite sympathy for her and raise awareness for a select women speaking out against what's become the greatest threat to female competition since its inception. Absolutely. I mean, for lack of a better way of putting it, it's shitting all over Title IX. If you're a woman hoping for a scholarship, hoping to transition into professional sports, whatever, the WNBA, I said it. I mean, anything. I mean, if they're eventually going to let dudes compete in some of these contests, it's just the way it is. There's safety issues. There's obviously locker room issues. The competitive advantage, I mean, it's blatant. It's obvious. We're watching the destruction of female sports and women's sports before our very eyes. And so many of the females that were supposedly all in favor of women's rights have turned their backs, their collective backs, on actual females. I covered that in a video the other day. Megan Rapinoe, Sue Bird, their backs are turned. Their backs are turned. To my knowledge, they have not come out and condemned what happened to Riley Gaines at all. Goes against their narrative. It doesn't surprise me that ESPN has not covered this at all. It does not fall under their scope of wokeness and what they cover as a leftist media operation. By the way, side note, just so everybody doesn't forget, Disney owns ESPN and ABC. Disney got in a very public battle with Ron DeSantis over, you got it, alphabet mafia shit, grooming, you name it. That is what the parent company of ESPN, that's how they get down. They have ignored this story, and it was a huge story. It's crazy. It truly is. Tell me what you think, black and white sports supporters. Peace. I'm out. Till next time.
Thanks for watching the show. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to tune in next time on Black and White Sports.